We will proceed with question time, and it's the honourable member for Indi.
Lives of young people in the country are different to that in the city. For example, in Indi, on average, families earn 20% less. There is poor public transport, mobile phone and internet coverage. Access to higher education is limited, and youth unemployment is a high 17.5%. How have these realities for young people under 30 living in rural and regional Australia been factored into the design of the changes to Newstart and Youth Allowance eligibility?
I call the Honourable Treasurer.
I thank the honourable member for Indi for her question, and she's absolutely right. And that has weighed heavily on our deliberations. And I would emphasise,
the member for Gorton.
And I'd say to the member for Indi, what you have just said proves that the status quo is not working. The status quo is not working. The legacy environment provided by the previous government is not working. And that's why we have rising unemployment. And in your electorate, that's why, as you say, you have very high youth unemployment. And that is why we have put in place mechanisms that, on a larger scale, are going to stimulate job creation. And the starting point is to reduce company tax for 800,000 businesses by 1.5%. That is a big step forward. That will help a lot of small and medium-sized enterprises in your electorate. Secondly, in relation to unemployment, we are giving businesses $10,000 to employ someone over the age of 50 who has been on Newstart or a disability support pension for 6 months. And that is about changing the culture of business. In relation to younger people, we are, for the first time, extending the concessional loan system that is available to university students. We are extending to people for diploma courses or sub-bachelor degree courses. And that's an important step forward because it treats everyone the same. And we are also giving anyone who studies an apprenticeship or undertakes an apprenticeship, we are giving them a $20,000 loan during the course of that apprenticeship to help them stay in that apprenticeship, importantly stay in that apprenticeship during the course of their work. The fundamental point is we need people under the age of 30 to earn or learn. And what has not worked to date are the legacy policies of the previous government, which saw youth unemployment rise and saw the overarching unemployment levels of Australia rise. We left them an unemployment rate of just over 4%. We inherited an unemployment rate rising to 6.25%. And all the shrieking from Labor cannot make up for the fact that someone's got to fix a mess, and we stand ready to do it.
Before I ask the member for Deakin, recognise the member for Deakin, I would like to advise the chamber that we have in the gallery with us today the former member for Hasluck, Mr Stuart Henry, and more particularly we have one of the greats of the opera world, Dame Kiri Te Kaurana, and we make her very welcome to this House. I call the honourable member for Deakin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question's to the Treasurer. Will the Treasurer outline the importance of contributing now to build the infrastructure of the future? And how will the East-West link help employment and opportunity in my electorate of Deakin?
I call the honourable Treasurer.
Well, I thank the member for Deakin for his question, and I'm going to endeavour to sing a wonderful tune for a brief moment, and that is about our infrastructure commitment in the last budget, which is about going to contribute to $125 billion of new productive infrastructure in Australia. $125 billion of new productive infrastructure in Australia. And we are committing $3 billion to build the East-West Link right across Melbourne. Now, the East-West Link is a hugely important project. It will reduce travel times by up to 20 minutes for commuters travelling from places such as Geelong and Ballarat to the city, and you'd welcome that. The honourable member would welcome that. Remove 20,000 trucks each day from roads around residential streets. The eastern section is expected to allow around 100,000 vehicles each day to bypass 23 sets of traffic lights. 23 sets of traffic lights. The western section, and this is important, and the Leader of the Opposition might want to listen to this, the western section will provide additional capacity for 100,000 vehicles per day, and it provides cross-city alternatives to the already congested eastern, Monash and Westgate freeways. Now, the good news is this actually starts before the end of this year. The work actually starts. Shovels are moving before the end of this year, and that is excellent news. It's excellent news in Melbourne, but it illustrates our commitment to get on with the job, because our political opponents talked a lot about infrastructure. They never actually delivered. But we're getting on with it. We're getting on with it with a $3 billion commitment. Now, I would think that the Leader of the Opposition would be enthusiastically embracing East-West. Enthusiastically embracing East-West, because he once upon a time he said, and I quote, "There are chronic problems in the western suburbs in terms of egress, and I'm keen to see it get better connected. There is a shortage of East-West links." That was the Leader of the Opposition. So I assume he supports our $3 billion commitment to East-West Link. I assume he supports 6,000 jobs. I assume he supports getting on with the job before Christmas. But what I tell you what he doesn't support people helping to pay for it. He doesn't support that, because we are understandably a bit bewildered at Labor's position on taxes, because last week they were opposing the deficit levy. Apparently tonight they're supporting it. Today they're opposing the increase in excise on fuel, but still they want to have an East-West link. That's it. Labor on the never-never. Nothing changes.
I call the honourable member for Jagga.
Killing in, Joe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Before the election, the Prime Minister promised to reduce cost of living pressures on Australian families. A single-income family earning $95,000 with 2 children will be up to $5,000 worse off each year, including cuts to family tax benefits. Does the Prime Minister agree with John Howard when he says this is, in effect, a tax rise on people in certain income brackets?
I'm giving the call to the Prime Minister, and I expect to have some silence so we can hear the answer. And that includes the member for Wakefield. The Prime Minister has the call.
Well, Madam Speaker, if the Shadow Minister opposite wanted to have a look at the tables in the budget documents, she would see that we are continuing to provide generous assistance to families with children. Now, Madam Speaker, obviously there are some changes to Family Tax Benefit Part B. I accept that. I also accept that the former Prime Minister, Mr Howard, was, as he said today, the father of Family Tax Benefit Part B. Now, Madam Speaker, there are some things that were absolutely right when we had surpluses of $20 billion a year, and there are quite different things which are absolutely right when we had deficits of $50 billion a year. And that is what we are dealing with. We are dealing with the debt and deficit disaster that members opposite created. We are dealing with Labor's debt and deficit disaster, and there were some things that were affordable with $20 billion surpluses which are not affordable with $50 billion deficits, the deficits that this Labor Party has given us. Now, Madam Speaker, I want to say I want to say that John Howard, to his great credit, made the decisions that were right for his time, and this government will make the decisions that are right for our time.
I call the honourable member for Parkes, I beg your pardon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister for Infrastructure and Regional Development. Will the minister outline how the budget will deliver a strong and viable future for regional Australia?
I call the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Infrastructure and Regional Development.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for his question. A member who understands full well how important it is to have strong regional economies if we want to have a strong nation. When our country is strong, when our regions are strong. And unfortunately, the regions have suffered from the last 6 years of Labor governments that cared little about regional Australia. Promises were made, many of them funded by a mining tax and therefore essentially unfunded because the mining tax didn't raise any money. But this budget sets a new path for Australia, a path to deliver us a sustainable future as a nation. And a significant part of delivering that sustainable future is the investment in infrastructure that the Treasurer has just referred to. A $50 billion Commonwealth contribution towards infrastructure expenditure of at least $125 billion. And that's a commitment that makes a difference everywhere in this country. Significantly in our cities, where a large number of major projects have been announced, but also to regional communities. There will be a $2.5 billion commitment in this budget to the Roads to Recovery program, extending the program into the future. But in 2015-16, there will be a double payment to local government across Australia to help them with their road and street work. In addition to that, there's a $565 million investment to fix dangerous spots on our roads, the accident spots, the black spots, many of which are in regional Australia and country towns. And a further $300 million for our new Bridges Renewal program, to fix some of those bridges that are falling apart, that can no longer carry heavy loads or are preventing the school bus from taking children to school. We'll be there fixing those projects in consultation with our community. And then, of course, we'll be delivering on specific projects also in regional communities through our community grants program. Indeed, even picking up some of the projects announced by the previous government which they hadn't funded, they hadn't contracted. No, we were doing the right things for those communities to fix the projects, to deliver the projects that Labor had not properly funded. And in addition to that, there'll be our own $1 billion National Stronger Regions Fund. There's $100 million for mobile phones, and we're grateful to the Minister for Communications for getting on with that task of filling in the gap. We'll make sure that regional Australia is back on the agenda, and we'll be listening tonight to see whether Labor's learnt anything about regional Australia in the opposition's budget reply.
The member for McMahon has the call.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer, and I refer the Treasurer to the Prime Minister's promise that there will be no new taxes under his government. I also refer the Treasurer to his comments this morning that he is astounded that Australians are upset by the $7 GP tax and that this is 2 middies of beer to go to the doctor. Treasurer, isn't it the case that it is the Australian people who are entitled to be astounded at this government's deceit and arrogance?
I call the Honourable Treasurer.
Madam Speaker, that wasn't really a question about the policy. That was just a political assertion. And I would say to the member for McMahon, if he wants to debate the issue, let us debate the issue. Let us debate the fact that Labor left us with $667 billion of debt and $123 billion of deficits, and something needs to be done about it. Let us debate the fact that they left us with rising unemployment, falling terms of trade, and we need to deal with those things. We need to deal with those things. Let us also have a debate about the fact that Labor left locked in increases in expenditure over the medium term of 3.7% per year above inflation, 3.7% per year above inflation, with an economy that is growing at less than 3%. Let us have a debate about these things, because they go directly to the quality of life that we are creating for the Australian people, because they're the issues that do matter. And of course, Labor has not yet said whether it supports the Medical Research Future Fund, because the only way the Medical Research Future Fund can be created is if there is a co-contribution when people go to visit the doctor, because every dollar of savings over the next 6 years in the health portfolio is going into the Medical Research Future Fund, the biggest medical research fund of its kind in the world. And why are we doing this, Madam Speaker? We are doing this because only through cure and discovery are we going to ensure that the health system Australians want and deserve over the next 50 years is going to be delivered. Finding a cure for cancer, finding a cure for dementia, finding a cure for Alzheimer's. And the Labor Party does not support that.
The member for Rankin is
warned. No, they don't. No, they don't. The member for Chifley says they do not support the medical research that is going to find a cure for cancer or dementia or Alzheimer's. And why? Because the Labor Party has never, ever paid it forward. They've never invested for the future. They've never understood that if you really want to build something that is going to improve the quality of life of everyday Australians, you have to start investing now. It is all about the politics. The entire contribution of the political opposition in response to the budget has been about politics, not about economics, not about building a stronger future. All they have to say is the political line. And that has been their line for 6 years. Australians have had enough of it.
I call the honourable member for Page.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Education. I refer the Minister to this media release by the Regional Universities Network that, and I quote, welcomes the announcement in the budget of an ambitious program of reform for higher education. Minister, how will these reforms increase opportunity for young Australians in regional areas like my electorate of Page?
Before I call the minister, I would point out to the member for Lawler and members who are sitting in that area of the chamber that it was difficult to hear the question because of the noise that was going on. I would have some silence while we hear from the Minister for Education giving a reply. Hopefully he was able to hear the question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I was fortunate to be able to hear the question. 94A. I was able to hear the question, Madam Speaker, from the member for Page, and it was a very much better question than the questions that come from the opposition. And I am pleased that he was able to refer to the press release from the Regional Universities Network. The chair of the Regional Universities Network, Professor Peter Lee, is the Vice-Chancellor of the Southern Cross University in Lismore in the member for Page's electorate. And he went on to say, in response to the budget in relation to the higher education reforms, and I quote, "We are particularly pleased that the government has decided to keep the demand-driven system for bachelor places and extended it to sub-bachelor places. This will assist in providing pathways and lift participation in higher education in regional Australia for less well-prepared students." He also said, "We recognise that in a deregulated fee environment, the government has chosen to ensure that scholarships are available for low SES and other students from backgrounds underrepresented in higher education." So I'm very pleased that the Regional Universities Network has supported and endorsed the government's approach to this very far-reaching higher education reform. They recognise in this higher education reform that there are real opportunities for rural and regional students that present themselves because of the far-reaching reforms that we are bringing about at the university level. Firstly, we are expanding opportunity for students to access, through the demand-driven system, the diploma and associate degrees, commonly called sub-bachelor courses. These are found in a high propensity in regional and rural Australia, preparing students that otherwise would find it difficult to pass university degrees, preparing them for university and giving them the opportunity to earn 75% more over a lifetime than they would otherwise earn if they didn't go to university. We're removing that cap, giving them the opportunity, giving more students in rural and regional areas the opportunity to go to university. We're also introducing the biggest Commonwealth scholarship scheme in the history of Australia, which will allow our regional universities, should they wish to do so, to pay bursaries to regional students to pay for their living expenses or rent or whatever else they need to do to be able to go to university. So we're freeing up the system so there can be new flexible ways for rural students to get to university. They'll also be able to benefit from the Trade Support Loan Program, where $20,000 will be able to be borrowed by apprentices from the taxpayer to be paid back later in life when they can afford to do so. And finally, we're giving them the freedom to become excellent in the areas that they do best, so they can compete with all universities in Australia and the Asian universities overseas that are getting better and better all the time.
I call the honourable member for McMahon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. I refer the Treasurer to his previous answer, in which he suggested a debate about his budget. Treasurer, I'll be at the National Press Club next Wednesday. Will you join me for a debate about your budget of broken promises and deceit?
We'll have some quiet. I give the call to the Honourable the Treasurer.
If I turned up at the National Press Club, it'd double the audience. And I'd say to you, but the good news is I'd be listening.
I call the honourable member for Barker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Social Services. What is the government doing to encourage young Australians to enter the workforce?
We'll have some silence and we'll hear from the Honourable the Minister for Social Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Barker for his question, and I commend him on the great representation of people in south-east South Australia that he brings to this parliament and their interests as his constituents. Madam Speaker, this government believes that young people should be learning or earning. Learning or earning. And that's why we're going to tighten access to unemployment benefits, the Newstart benefit, for young people in Australia under the age of 30, and we'll be doing that by applying a waiting period for up to 6 months, depending on a person's work history, as to becoming eligible for the Newstart or the unemployment benefit. But, Madam Speaker, the important point about this is if a young person returns to school or takes up training or study, then they're exempt from these provisions, totally exempt from these provisions, and they'll get the support that the Minister for Education was pointing out in his previous answer in this place. But, Madam Speaker, we also recognise that there are a range of circumstances in which people may be vulnerable, and therefore they should be exempt from this provision as well. So for single parents in receipt of the family tax benefit, they will be exempt. For principal carers, they will be exempt. For people who are not able to work 30 hours a week, they too will be exempt. For part-time apprentices, they'll be exempt. for participants in the Disability Employment Services Scheme. They too will be exempt, and of course Stream 3 and 4 job seekers will be exempt. And I'm asked a question by the member opposite, who's in it. That's a good question, because the answer is this scheme is targeted to work-ready young people. And if they're not working, then we want them to be in training so that they can get a job in the future. And that's what this scheme is clearly about. And the comments, Madam Speaker, coming from the other side of the chamber, mark the contrast between the Labor opposition and this government, because we have, Madam Speaker, a Labor opposition that wants young Australians to be welfare ready. This is a government that wants them to be work ready.
The member for Gorton.
Thanks very much, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. The Business Council of Australia's CEO Jennifer Westacott has described the government's decision to leave Australians under 30 who can't find a job with nothing to live on for 6 months as too tough. Why is the Prime Minister forcing young people into a life of poverty to pay for his deceit?
I call the Honourable the Prime Minister.
Well, Madam Speaker, the budget that was brought down earlier this week is a very important budget for the future of our country. It is designed to create a culture of enterprise. It is designed to ensure that we are not focusing on what people can't do, but on what people can do. Now, Madam Speaker, the Shadow Minister obviously wasn't listening to the very good answer on this very topic that has just been provided by the Minister for Social Services. But I want to say, Madam Speaker, that the
Prime Minister will resume his seat. The member for Gorton has the call on
yes,
on
relevance. Those young people who will actually have nothing from this government, will be getting nothing, deserve a Prime Minister who will give a relevant answer.
The Prime Minister has the call.
Madam Speaker, we believe that work-ready youngsters, work-capable youngsters, ought to be either learning or earning. And as a result of this budget, those who are not working for a wage will have far more opportunity to learn a skill, to go to university, to go to TAFE, because this government is giving them far more opportunity to do so. Now, Madam Speaker, I believe that this budget embodies the great aspirations of the Australian people.
Sydney.
And at the very heart of our national character are two things. First of all, the desire to extend to the more vulnerable members of our community a fair go. And this budget absolutely protects the fair go principle, which is so important in this country of ours, this country that we love. But, Madam Speaker, Australians also expect people who can to have a go. And that's what this is all about. Those who aren't capable of working will continue to be protected, but those who are capable of working and who aren't will be expected to have a go. They will be expected to be either earning or learning, and that's the way it ought to be.
I call the honourable member for Brisbane.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. Could the Minister update the House on budget measures to improve Australia's research capacity?
I call the honourable the Minister for Health.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member for Brisbane, who is a local member for some of the finest medical research institutes in the country, and she's a passionate supporter at a personal level of many of those causes. And as many Australians are, we contribute to medical research because we have a mature model with the world's best researchers. We have amazing institutes. We have universities and clinical settings otherwise that deserve the support of their government. I believe that one of the proudest achievements out of this budget is the creation of the $20 billion Medical Research Future Fund. There are a couple of important aspects to it. One is that we protect the capital into perpetuity. We will stop any future Labor government from raiding that fund, which is incredibly important because we know that the Labor Party has never seen a dollar that they don't want to spend. And we want to make sure that as the capital is protected, we can spend down the earnings, which will mean by 2015-16 we will increase the money that we already spend in medical research by about $20 million, and by 2022 that figure will grow to over $1 billion. And with that money, Madam Speaker, we will help the best researchers in the world find the cures and discoveries that will be needed with an ageing of our population. We know in our country already that diseases of the brain, that rare cancers, that coronary disease needs extra support. If we are to make a sustainable health system going forward, we have to put extra money into research so that not only can we extend our life expectancy, but that we can improve our way of life in this country. And this government is absolutely determined, Madam Speaker, to make sure that we can grow that investment. I want to turn to a couple of comments that have been made by people